Okay, uh, everybody's probably aware that Google Analytics, Universal Analytics is going away as far as support here in just a couple of months. So for those of you who are wondering what the plan is, this is kind of what the plan is. Uh, let's see here. So just a brief introduction. Basically what I just said, if you're not using any of the data on universal analytics, this is probably you're not going to care about because you're not going to have a migration task to do. But if you are using universal analytics, or if you want to start using Google Analytics 4, going to cover the steps that you're going to need to cover to get there. At the end, I'm going to ask some questions about how folks are actually using it. I know that we do some stuff that is not typical from the Google sites. This is how you implement Google Analytics 4. They give you some sample code and we do some extra stuff. That's primarily because we're a Portland environment and we want to capture additional information. But there is a question about are we capturing enough information? Are we capturing the right information? Are there additional reports that are not available today through Google Analytics? Is there stuff that you want to be able to do that Google Analytics will never do, and we may need to take a look at how to capture some of that information in addition. So talk about that a little bit. Okay, so the migration to Google Analytics 4, it's really a three-step process. The first part is within the analytics.google.com website. Under the admin tab, there is an opportunity to create a GA4 property. If you're already using Google Analytics, Universal Analytics, there's a property that you have that probably starts with a UA dash. That's how you can recognize the user analytics. The new property will start with a G dash. So if you're wondering if what you're doing is quite right, well, the UA property actually will work with this code for a little while until Universal Analytics stops working. But you can do this now. You can go in and create a Google Analytics 4 property for your environment. You can create multiple properties if you have different settings for test or development or production. I think with Cal Poly Pomona, this is where I've done all of my development work. We pretty much route everything to the production site because the volume of traffic is so large in production that it massively overruns anything you would ever do in the dev environment. But you have the opportunity to keep separate properties in there if you want. I put a link to a video. During the development and research for this presentation, I was looking at, okay, what can Google Analytics 4 actually do? And how close are we to their best practices? So that link is in there. It's about an hour. It's not particularly technical from a code perspective. There's a couple of places where it shows you some JavaScript that needs to get embedded in pages. But it does a really good job of covering the Google Analytics website as far as what the definition of terms are, what kind of reports are available out of the can, and what additional customizations you can do using dimensions and data that you can capture, which we are capturing some additional non-standard data. And if you want to report on that, that's you'll need to understand how that happens. So someone at your organization will probably need to spend an hour watching that to really understand what's going on behind the scenes. The next part is you need to be running a version of uPortal that has the updates. The updates are written, but they're not deployed to the mainline uPortal environment. I'm going to be putting them out in uPortal here probably next week, and we'll get a release cut that'll include them and sending that out to everybody so you can get that version deployed. These are not tied to the migration. You have to do both of these steps. You have to have a GA4 property, and you have to have a version of uPortal that supports the property, but you can do one before the other. They don't have to happen at the same time. And then the final part is you actually have to tell uPortal, okay, replace the property that you're using with this new property. It's just a change to the Google Analytics config portlet definition.xml. There's a line in there called property ID, and that's where you change it. So just a data import, and you're good. Or you can do it from the admin UI. You have an opportunity to change properties in there as well. I was very surprised how straightforward the migration actually is. The code is a little more involved, but it really wasn't that hard from a admin perspective to make this change. Just out of curiosity, how large is the population, the number of universities that are using universal analytics at this point? Do we have any idea?
Are you talking about the student population?
No, I'm talking about the number of universities that are going to care. Do we know? No.
Can you rephrase the question? If
I know that Cal Poly Pomona
Uh-huh.
uses Google Analytics.
Uh-huh.
Do we know other colleges that are using Google Analytics? Is Tam using Google Analytics? Okay.
I mean, it's limited. We do use it for the uPortal deployment for sure.
Okay.
It's limited use on other applications. It's kind of hit and miss.
Okay. Anybody online using it that we know of?
Yeah, UCR is using Google Analytics.
Who is?
University of California, Riverside.
Okay. The reason I asked is because the next couple of slides I'm going to talk about what the actual code is doing. I'm not gonna. This is more of a technical session. Again, I apologize because we've got Laura and we've got all this conversation about philosophy with Nito and them, and this is kind of more of a techie side of it, but I don't want to lose too many people, so hopefully we won't spend too much time in the code, and I don't think I'm going to show any actual code here. There is a couple of different files that are affected. The first file is what loads the Google Analytics script. In the old version, it was basically a static script that was downloaded from Google. In the new version, it is a dynamically generated script. Every time you go into Google Analytics and you create a property and you do your customizations, it's going to modify the script that they have. And as a result, when this init.jsp file gets loaded in your uPortal environment, it's going to go and check and see if I have the current copy, and it will download that. That's why it needs to have your property before it tries to do anything interesting. In your existing installations, you have a property. It's the UA dash, and it will work against that, but you're not going to be leveraging what Google Analytics 4 can do. You're going to still be using the old environment. It's backwards compatible, basically. Okay. This next file, up-ga.js, this is the one that does the interesting stuff. In that video that I referenced a couple slides ago, I talk about there's a couple of very small code blocks that have to get copied into your environment. up-ga.js is our implementation of what was a very small code block, and it becomes a very large code block. The reason it becomes a very large code block is because we're a portlet environment, and we want to be able to send a notification of every portlet that we render on a page as getting a page view. So if your page is in full mode, a max mode, it'll only send one page view. But if you have 15 portlets that are being deployed, it'll show all 15 of them. In addition, we have built some logic into the code for was it flyouts and for a different, I think, a tab version. When we're exiting a page, if you click on a link, it will let you know that, okay, I've left this, I've left the page. And that required additional logic in order to display. We also send a timing event. I think it's trying to, I'm guessing from what I'm reading of the code, it's trying to tell you basically how long these portlets take to render. One of the fundamental differences between the Universal Analytics and the Google Analytics, Google Analytics 4, is that in the old version, all of the events were sent synchronously. You click something, stuff happens. In this, you click something, it gets cached, and then every about 10 seconds or so, all of the events get sent as a block, which makes this one a lot less chatty. And it also leverages some of the session management that Google Analytics provides within their JavaScript code. So it's, I want to say less, I want to say it's friendlier. It's better if you're going into the developer tools and you're looking at traffic that's going across the wire. You're going to see a lot better organized data, I guess, that's going across. I'm not going to give you a whole lot of insight as to how Google Analytics is actually going to report on it, but it will send one message as opposed to 10 messages. Now, the question I have down at the bottom of this page is, it says does not leverage the capability of a dynamically generated Google Tag Manager script. This was my comments, and as I went back and took a look at some of the code, I'm wondering if this is even a valid comment. Because we are sending page views for every portlet that gets rendered, we're sending a lot of messages. But we're also sending timing information, and I'm not sure that the timing information is going to be captured correctly. In addition, if I remember correctly, if I heard correctly, in the existing version of Universal Analytics, we do not go into shadow DOMs to attach things to links. So if you have a lot of web components that have links embedded within them, you're not going to get analytics data on those as well. I know that Benito has done some work in the past on being able to capture that information, and that might be something we need to do in the future for Google Analytics to this particular script, the UPGA.js script, in order to attach stuff to those links as well. That's not currently in there. Is anybody using the session, the timing information?
We do sometimes, depending on the scenario. It's useful to know if we start seeing slowdowns and page loads and things of that nature. Or if we have web components, then how long does a particular web component take to render or fully render?
Okay.
And you mentioned the shadow DOM. So if you don't have shadow DOM enabled, then it would capture the links within those web components?
Yes. Yeah. One of the questions that came up as I was preparing for this presentation, I did not make any effort to try and understand what the actual business requirements were for Google Analytics and the data that we're capturing. All I tried to do was take the existing code and port it to using the new standards. So is there an interest at some point to either capture additional information? They're called dimensions within the new paradigm. I'm not sure if that's what they're called in the old one. Or is there a desire to create standard reports within Google Analytics? Is the level of knowledge that we at Unicon currently have, are we going to try and leverage that at the individual universities for capturing these reports, or are you guys good for how to use Google Analytics?
I think we're pretty good. I mean, we use it mostly just to see general loads, especially during peak periods of the year, right? How many users are actively on the system, so we can see those trends year to year. Yeah, what they're looking at, we talk about it. We haven't really done much with it, but we do have some interest to see where they're clicking the most. So we'll kind of talk about our things about dynamic interfaces. You know, if we know what students are going to more at a particular point of time, can we also then leverage that or other data to reorder things based on usage? So that's kind of what we've discussed. We don't really use it much for that. It's mostly active users and when they're using it.
Okay.
I use it for I get a request from a different customers. Because I'm also responsible for our general site. So the Google Analytics it is very valuable tool to use what is the geographical location of the user? How many international users do we have? During the COVID time, a lot of international students, they went back to their home. So what is the percentage, what country, you know, they are coming to my CPP? So that was one. Secondary item, because we are constant struggle how to make the my CPP mobile friendly. We see the percentage of the mobile render versus the desktop render. So that's another one. Number three is the dynamic content. So we are interested, so I was sharing that we came up with a virtual resource center. And we got a request saying that, can you give me the activity report of that page? With the Google Analytics, we were not able to, so it had that page itself was, had about 50 links. The one that I was not able to get, the one that I was able to get is a page hit rate of those. The one that I was struggling was those hit rate generated from my CPP. So user click event,
Right.
yeah. So those are some of the, and then if it is a peak rate, the first week, what is the, what is the time frame? And then it was, I still remember the one of the, during the semester, my CPP went up. And we were wondering what's going on. Apparently that was a registration period at a class time. And then, I work from IT, so we didn't know it was going up. But with my limited, resource, like I went to the Google Analytics, oh my gosh, there's like people coming into my CPP. And I called the registrar saying, hey, is there anything going on? I said, yeah, today's the first day of ad drop. Yeah. Yeah. So, and here's the thing, what you did for us, it is enough because I am pulling the report directly from the Google Analytics. So did I answer your question?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
So most of the report, we are able to get it. Personally, I'm familiar with the Google Analytics, and the people who wants to get a report, I said, okay, here's an access to Google Analytics, please get it from there. And then we are talking about other partners, functional partner within the university.
Right.
So, yeah, so just as long as we have the core component working, and then it is built, which I thank you for that, Michael, for doing that. Yeah.
Also to interject that we related to this, but a little separate, is the effort with Catholic Pomona around capturing events and clicks and reporting them directly to uPortal, be captured in the event system. That is now in uPortal 5.14 and is turned off by default. Just, we don't need extra chattiness if you don't care about it, but there are some options there.
Yeah, that particular feature, where we've got permission to release it next week at Cal Poly Pomona. We're going to route the event data to a separate database, so that way it's not impacting the rest of the database, we are going to limit the types of transactions that go to that separate database. And one of the features of that version is security can be configured in one of three states. You can say, I'm not going to capture any of the events, I'm going to capture all of the events, or I'm only going to capture authenticated user events. So if you've got guests wandering around, you're not capturing that information as well. This is, I think, where we discovered or realized that the Shadow DOM is not getting captured, and Benito had to go in and do the deep dive to figure out how to attach links and via JavaScript to that part of the code. So these two, Google Analytics and the user engagement project, those are very similar. This is the user analytics, the user engagement project is, I don't want to say low rent, it's just a more targeted data analytics capturing mechanism. It doesn't quite serve the same purposes, and it certainly doesn't have the same front end that Google provides. But that's also an option for capturing information. Let me see here. Okay. One thing I did want to point out, from a historical perspective, I think the GA4 dashboard and report writers have at least as much and probably way more capability than the existing version does. In addition, from a real-time perspective, the GA4 can capture up to 30 minutes of data to report on. Previously, it was only 5 minutes. We had the incident where the system slowdown happened, and I was asked, okay, can we see what's going on Google Analytics? And the 30 minutes had passed by then, and we're trying to figure out, okay, what's going on. But you can, using the newer versions, do breakouts by hours and minutes to see, okay, on these specific periods of time, this is the volume of traffic that's going through the website, if that's something that's interesting. I thought it was kind of a cool troubleshooting tool. How much more? This was basically, we've had some of this conversation already. The Google's had the tag manager, because it is so flexible, because it has so much built-in stuff. There's a question of how much, if any, of the existing custom code can be eliminated because of the nature of portlets. I'm not sure that all of it will be able to get eliminated because of the timing needs. I'm not sure that any of it can be eliminated. Already mentioned the Shadow DOM. I throw that out there because I haven't tested the new GA4 code to see if it can delve into the Shadow DOM and capture links there. That will have to happen. And then the last part of it was, are there, as a resource for the uPortal community, do we want to spend some effort to say, okay, this is how we're using it, or provide some training? Gina, you were kind of like the first one over the hill on getting the Google Tag Manager and getting the properties set up. Was there anything interesting that you discovered when you were creating that?
There definitely was a learning curve, and I'm still learning. So yeah, I thought it was just a back-end change, but the front-end change, there's quite a bit. And I let me just say that I'm still learning, but the basic report that I'm required to get, I'm able to get it. I'm talking about just the like monthly click rate, and then the hourly rate, hourly changes, those things. So it is a matter of a different menu, and I'm just a novice user. And I was kind of surprised that I became a novice user from an expert user of the Google Universal Analytics. Yeah, it is quite different.
Now, as a requirement to make this change, we're doing this because Universal Analytics is going away. Is there any value that you've seen from the dashboard for the types of data that you can report on?
None yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
It has been a few months. So, and then so with our regular public site, we still have a Universal Analytics turned on. So I am still, if somebody's asking for report, I just go to the Universal Analytics. So yeah, I'm not a good person to answer that question. But throughout the year, when the Universal Analytics is no longer available, then I will have to see it. So I was talking to one of my person that he was interested in doing the Google Analytics. He was sharing that what he did in his college. I mean, College of Engineering, he was saying. And he said the geographic location, he was emphasized, that college was emphasized on, and then for the admission process. And then some of the programs for for the scholarships and those, he said it made up that impact. So yeah, so who visits and then where they are from, which area is that and then it helped them with a targeted audience of a different high school. Yeah, so
Okay, I don't think I have anything else to cover for this presentation. It's a question of, are there any questions? Is this a big thing? Obviously with Google Analytics, with Universal Analytics going away, there's a short window that we're gonna have here in the next 3 months or so. If that people are gonna have to migrate to the next version of uPortal. So.
Michael, we had the custom setting that we have in the Universal Analytics. We have to do it again, right? In the Google Analytics 4.
Okay, which custom setting?
You know, the one that we lost.
That was not in the. We're gonna have to talk about that, because I still am not. Kevin, do you remember seeing where this custom setting is, what this custom code is? Because I don't think I've ever seen it.
Was it the event action thing or? Yeah.
So
seems
I
like something
believe
that changed.
so all the changes that, if there's a custom variable that you had to make a change on the uPortal side, that change is no longer available in the Google Analytics 4 unless you do some changes. So we had some custom variables on the uPortal side to keep the event tracking that would work with the Universal Analytics.
Well, there's 2 settings, well, I think probably 4 settings that are set within the code. One of them is required for a base version, and I think it's like let me pull up the source here real quick, because we all want to look at JavaScript. There is a page view, which is just generic. There's a timing complete. There's an event category of tab. There's an event category of tab. Then there's some stuff that happens for the flyaway events. There's a having problems finding this. Okay, outbound link and flyout link. Those are probably dimensions that need to be defined, but those were in the uPortal base code. So I'm wondering if those just need to be added as custom dimensions, just like we have event type old maps to event type.
Yeah.
We probably just need to map those as well. But yeah,
Okay.
we just need to. We just need to focus on that. I had a couple
Yeah.
other things that I was doing before I was working on
Okay.
this, so.
Yeah.
And that fix will go in place for
Correct.
the one typo that I had, that was a bug, oops. That's ready to get deployed, it'll go in next week.
Yeah.
So, and this will all be done before we get it rolled out to the main uPortal community. Anything else?
Say just one thing, I don't know if it fits in this space, but I mean, we use a lot of other observability tools to try to track user interactions and particularly errors, if they're getting errors that they're not reporting.
Mhm.
In our particular case, we use the Elastic product, but we've looked at New Relic, there's plenty on the market. So I think that's one thing we're trying to evaluate is whether or not we need the Google Analytics in addition to some of the observability, or if the observability products give us everything we need. Again, your comment about, they're very chatty, kind of making all these requests. And if we have two of them doing it, that's just adding more traffic for people.
Well, the new version is less chatty than the previous version of Google Analytics. GA4 will batch everything up into one transaction, whereas Universal Analytics, every transaction got its own set. Obviously, the payload is going to be larger, but the actual network connection is smaller. As to what type of data Google Analytics can capture, whether you're getting HTTP 404s or some other server level error, I would assume that some of that, if not all of that, can probably be captured and reported on by Google Analytics as well, but that's something I'll have to research. So if we can consolidate on a smaller suite of tools rather than having yet one more tool in those toolbox, that would be good as well. So
The tool that you are referring, is that free or is that something that you pay for?
We pay for it. No.
It is, they do have free versions, yes.
Oh.
It's an open source product,
I see.
and what's it called?
Elastic.
Elastic.
Yeah.
Well, they have like the non-relational database Elasticsearch, and so the Elastic company
Okay.
has, what they call the element stack.
Okay.
What made you choose that product?
It's open source.
Open source for starters, right? And we did start out using it, I guess, without paying for them. And then we switched to license it for some more, I guess, advanced features was the theory. But I think one of the biggest benefits that I personally see from it is it doesn't give us just so Google Analytics is very user front end focused, where with the Elastic, they have plugins, these real user monitoring plugins, and you can put them either in your web components, in your JavaScript. You can it'll first auto instrument things based on the programming language. So we have it on the Tomcat side for the Java applications. We have it on our API sides, which are node-based and JavaScript, and we can put it on our front end, both again in the uPortal framework as well as web components. And then we have a single interface or UI that's aggregating all of it. So we can see, I say in theory, because sometimes we still have to do some digging, but it does a decent job of, we can see if there's a user who did a click and that user got an error, right? But then the question is, what error did they get? If they never reported it, how much do we see? So we can potentially see if they got a JavaScript error and the front end reports that and logs it back and we can see it, or they made it past the front end, they hit an API server like a node service, it generated an error and we back end log that so we can see that. And if it had a connection to a database and the database reported an error, we might potentially get that log. And then the same and it has all the normal, how many users clicking. I mean, there's different modules that are kind of tracking these different things. So that's why I said, I think Google Analytics, the data is useful, especially if you're concerned with and we agree with you, we need how many users, basically, what are they clicking on? What times of day or periods are they really doing it? But for me, it's a lot of users don't report errors and problems. And I think it's this observability gives as a development team an opportunity to see, well, what kind of errors are people getting that they're not reporting? And can we now proactively fix those?
Now you've got me thinking about actual ways to try and see what Google Analytics, a new area to take a look at it, how it is handling error scenarios, if it's handling error scenarios, because I'm sure that
the old one does track like the 404s and the 500, so you can get that kind of high level.
Okay.
You can glean that. I don't know about the new one. I assume they would carry that forward.
I would assume.
It's pretty basic. But what I've never seen it get you is the details about what may be happening behind the scenes. So, the user may get a 500, but the error message, but it finally got to the user, might just say it's truly just a 500.
right,
It
it doesn't have any visibility at all of what's going on
Right.
at Apache or at the database level.
Exactly, where we might be able to trace it down, and now we can say, oh, that user hit this specific web portlet, it went to this web component, it called this API, and this API called this procedure in the database, and that returned the error. And this was the actual Oracle error
Yeah.
that occurred. We can
That's
trace that.
cool. If you can trace that all the way down,
Yep.
that's awesome.
And there are open source tools that do that. I mean, I can't think of the name now that, I mean, observability is the basic thing, or real user monitoring, but when you trace, I guess there's a word for that tracing where,
Trace, I think, anything about Dynatrace or OpenTrace?
maybe open tracing. Yeah, maybe there's a name for, there's some open source products that do it to, basically there's IDs that are associated with all these events, and that's how you can pull them back together and say all these different events related to each other. And then in Elastic, in their case, they bring that forward. Anyway, that was a long-winded way to say, I think Google Analytics is interesting, but it might be even more interesting if there are other observability stacks, including open source stacks, that could be offered up and people can connect and look into those.
Okay.
Mhm.
Excellent. Thank you.
But this was useful. We'll probably still move forward and do the updates, right?
Mhm.
And what version of uPortal did you say this will be available? Because you said it was still in the CPP
It's
code.
probably gonna be 5.15 or would it be it wouldn't be 5.14.1 or 5.14.2, because this is a new feature, I'm assuming.
No, that's debatable, right? Is it a new feature, or just
Well,
pushing it because Google decided to push us to change?
I personally don't care one way or
I
the
would say the
other.
next release.
Okay.
The next release. Okay.
Yeah.
It's working, right?
Hmm.
And so we'll just, needs to be rolled into a pull request. But we'll cut a release soon, or rather later.
What kind of time frame were you thinking for that one?
For that release?
Yeah.
Probably next couple weeks.
Yeah.